Hey everyone, what's going on? Thanks for tuning in to Relevant Jukebox, and today I'm back after a mini break of sorts. I was away for the past couple weeks, just enjoying the summer, and we are well into July at this point, so I wanted to give a half-year roundup. So I'm going to go over a series of records that I didn't touch upon that were released in the first half of 2021, and also stay tuned till the end of the video as I'll update you on what my favorite releases are so far this year. So as usual, if you are new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. Also drop a like if you like the video, helps out the content, makes it go farther, and hit that notification bell to be notified whenever I put out new videos. So starting things off, I wanted to give a shout out to the new MF Doom and Czarface project, Super What. This is the first posthumous Doom that we have heard so far since his passing in late last year. Nothing entirely new, refreshing, or crazy, I guess, from either respective artists. More, they're both just kind of existing in their current space and doing it pretty consistently. So if you have been enthralled with those comic book inspired, like chopped and screwed bangers, that definitely give this a listen. Next up is a release from Gloom. The album is titled Internet, and this is a synth pop release that came out on Italians Do It Better. And for the most part, it does stick in a similar 80s inspired, gothy kind of synth pop lane that you would probably expect from Italians Do It Better. There are a couple decent tracks on here, but for the most part, I don't know, very forgettable, doesn't really stand out amongst other releases on the catalog, and I don't know, just kind of forgettable tracks overall. I wanted to mention this new EP from Sam Gelatry. I don't really know if I'm saying that correctly, but it's titled 4, and it's a handful of singles that he's released with a couple new ones, and it's a pretty decent collection of tracks. If you're into, like, you know, the more electro-pop leaning, kind of hip-hop inspired pop music, I think you should give it a listen. It's pretty decent. Might catch the ears of like some Brockhampton fans. Latest album from the indie rock band Wolf Alice. It's titled Blue Weekend, and this is one that I've actually been asked to review and have seen it get a lot of praise online, and I just can't really figure out why. This band is just a very bland, washed out, like 90s indie pastiche, as you can tell by just looking at the cover. It's not terrible by any stretch of the imagination, but I mean, it doesn't really pull me in any way or really have me excited for anything that happens on this LP. I mean, I would just suggest to skip it. Bladee has released yet another full-length album. This one's titled The Fool, and you know, this one has been satisfying a lot of the Drain Gang fans out there. If you are a big Bladee fan, I'm sure you're gonna enjoy this album. But for me, again, it is just vocally, I can't get into the vibe, really, that he puts out, even though I have noticed pretty significant growth in a lot of the instrumental palettes that he brings to the table. This one's a little twinkly, it's got a lot of nice loop melodies in there, but again, I don't know, his vocals just, like, stop me from getting into the vibe overall of his music. Danny Elfman has released a new album over here titled Big Mess, which I think is pretty accurate, as the entire album sounds like a big mess to me. I've enjoyed a lot of his soundtracks that he's put out over the years, obviously with his stuff with Tim Burton and all the other various releases he's had, but I mean, he tries his hand at like industrial and like stadium rock on here, and it just clashes in not a satisfying way. Aesthetically sounds like something that came out of a Hot Topic garbage bin. Producer Pierre Bourne has yet another installment out in his Life of Pierre series. This is Volume 5. It follows in the footsteps of Volume 4 as just being not enjoyable to me, actually. Some of the material in here I find borderline unlistenable, just the way he repeats the melodies on here to death, and they're not enjoyable a lot of the times. It's kind of head-scratching how he can like produce some of the more in-demand bangers out there over the past few years, but on his solo material just really falters and pales in comparison to everything he does with other artists. Yeah, I don't know, this one just wasn't for me overall. Doja Cat dropped her newest album, Planet Her, and you know, at this point, this just feels like I'm being served the same type of glossy R&B hip-hop crossover over and over again. There's like absolutely nothing that occurs on this LP that I feel like I haven't heard already. It's just very trendy sounding, and you know, I don't know, I just kind of get this like annoyed feeling when I listen to a Doja Cat track at this point. I'm just kind of like, ugh. It's catchy, but it's annoying that it's catchy. And I mean, there is one track on here that was pretty enjoyable. It's the one with Ariana Grande, but that track almost feels just very displaced from the rest of the music on there, as it feels like it was written by a completely different team. It's just like, you know, a little bit like too slick for a Doja Cat track, so I don't know what's going on there, if anybody else felt that way. But yeah, I don't know. Latest album from Modest Mouse, The Golden Casket, is easily their worst album to date. And rounding out this portion of the video, there's the latest full-length album from Lorraine. It's titled Fatigue. Now, this album has been getting highly praised across the internet. Got Best New Music at Pitchfork. I've been asked to review it before, and I could see where there's a little bit of buzz going on here. It's like pretty abstracted R&B with some like glitchy electronic elements to it, and it has a very like spacious sort of like soulful edge kind of going on, which I could see why people would think this is right in my wheelhouse. But after consuming the whole album, I feel like the entire listening experience that it has to offer can just be boiled down to the first 2 tracks. Actually, mainly the second track. I mean, you could just listen to that song, and then that's everything else that occurs on the album over and over again over the next, like, 10 tracks. So, transitioning away from those records, now I want to mention to you guys what my favorite albums of the year have been so far. And none of these are going to be in order. It's just going to kind of be random. And most of these releases, I have full-length reviews out for them, so go check those out if you haven't already. But kicking off this batch of records, I wanted to mention the new album from Spirit of the Beehive, Entertainment Death. I do believe this is their best full-length album so far. Really big step up in recording quality from the past release. It's very noisy. It's chaotic. It's kind of satisfying and mysterious at most of the times. And it definitely brings you into those deep pockets of like warm, like satisfaction that Spirit of the Beehive have kind of brought to the table at this point, and have just kind of remained sort of unpredictable across the entire track list. So really enjoyed this one. Next up, I wanted to shout out Japanese Breakfast with her release of Jubilee. Just really, really enjoyable indie pop music going on here. I liked it front to back. A lot of like colorful instrumentation, really great vocal performances, and like sharp songwriting on here that just has me revisiting it over and over again. Next, I wanted to give a shout out to Floating Points, Pharaoh Sanders, and the London Symphony Orchestra with their collaborative release of Promises. Yeah, this is just one of those like timeless sounding jazz releases that really caught me off guard. It has a very isolated and like insular feel to it, but the really prominent lead melody that kicks off this whole record and kind of stays throughout the entirety of it is just like woven into my mind at this point. I mean, it has such a timeless sound and feel to it. Lots of gentle instrumentation that collide the worlds of jazz and electronic music like you might expect from these two artists, but it just goes over in like the best possible way. Next up, I wanted to shout out Ski Mask's Pool. This is a release that has grown on me since I've reviewed it. To my understanding, it's actually a compilation of sorts of slightly older material mixed with new material, which I wasn't aware of before, but kind of makes sense how I felt the track list was a little more jumbled. But just pretty consistent front to back. I mean, he does bring a nice variety of sounds. I like his ear for melodies as well, and this is just music that I can put on in the background. I could drive in the car with it, or, you know, really focus in on it and get a stimulated experience. So it's kind of been filling in the really empty, weird times throughout my day where I'll just throw one of these tracks on and enjoy it. Next up, gotta mention the new Tyler, the Creator album, Call Me If You Get Lost. Yeah, I mean, I think Tyler pretty much knocked it out of the park once again on this one. The production is insane. Some of his more experimental and avant-garde sounding stuff to date as well. I'm definitely loving his like newfound approach to bringing in these jazz influences and soul samples. It kind of reminds me a little bit of Griselda Records at times, but it definitely still has that Tyler flair going on. But yeah, one of his better releases in his discography. And finally, I wanted to shout out the new Spelling record, The Turning Wheel. Just a pretty wonderful and superbly crafted art pop LP from Spelling, following up her awesome Maisie Fly. And this one is kind of dark, it's very soulful, almost really subtle at times in its like strange presentation, but it's definitely a grower as well if you really sit down with this album and have a lot of patience with it. Oh, and how can I forget, her vocal performances on here are just absolutely stunning. So that's gonna do it for this halfway point kind of roundup, if you will. I hope you enjoyed the video and got some good suggestions out of it. And now that I'm sort of back in the rotation here, I'll get into reviewing some new records. There's a couple that I have coming out soon, so stay tuned for those reviews. But as always, thank you so much for watching. Make sure to like and share, and if you want more content from me, hit that subscribe button. Peace.